All right, so here we got the part 3 video for our shop video series on putting together the frame. Part 2 was doing the pocket holes, which we have down here. So if you know, watch part 2 of the video to see how to do this. This is part 3. We're going to talk about the dowels. All right, we're looking at the back of our frame here. We do all our measurements and write everything back here because it'll eventually be hidden. But we're going to put some dowels here and some dowels here, right? Basically, roughly looking like this onto the piece of wood, and I'm going to show you how we're going to do that. All right, I like to label everything, keeps everything organized so you know what pieces you're working on and what you're putting there, and you don't get confused and make mistakes. All right, first thing we're going to do, we're going to put our measurements on this piece of wood right here where we want our dowels to go, and then we're going to transfer those measurements to the other pieces. I'll show you how to do that. So let's get these guys out of the way for now. We'll just look at this piece of wood here. What I want to do is I want to put a mark 3/4 of an inch in from each edge of this piece of wood here. I'm going to use this square here. This is really nice because it's got a little lip and it goes right up against the piece of wood. Okay, so when we want to mark something out, I put it right up against there nice and tight. I look for my 3/4 of an inch mark. Okay, and then I'm going to put a mark right there, 3/4 of an inch. Just a light little mark with my pencil. That's the one side. Then I can flip this over. Again, tight up against here. I go to 3/4 of an inch and I put a mark there. Okay. All right, here I'm putting the square up to the piece of wood, and that's, see my mark at 3/4 of an inch right there. Okay. So now I've got 3/4 and 3/4. All right, let's just label that. 3/4 of an inch, and 3/4 of an inch. Okay, so that's that side. The miter side, we got to do a little bit of a different measurement here, because if we go too close to the edge here, if we're too close up here and we drill a hole, we're going to drill a hole right through the end here. The dowel is going to come out. It's going to look pretty awful. We want to bring these dowels in so they're completely hidden in the wood. All right, so we're going to bring our measurement in here. What I'm going to do is right from the tip of the miter here, we're going to do 1 1/4. Okay. So I'm going to measure from the tip here to that first line is 1 1/4, and then we're going to do 1 inch in between those lines. Okay, so now that we have our first set of marks measured out, and you want to verify it, double check your measurements. Now I'm going to line up my pieces of my frame as perfectly as I can, okay? And to do dowels, we have to drill into both pieces of wood, all right? So those holes have to be aligned perfectly for that dowel to fit in properly and line up and squeeze together, okay? So we have to mark both of these pieces perfectly. And to do that, you want to do them at the same time. Okay, so now I have my marks here. I line it up as perfectly as possible, and I want to make that mark or transfer that mark right here at the same time on both pieces of wood. So now these two lines line up automatically, and these two line up together also. Do it this way. Don't measure these pieces out separate. You're going to be prone to making a mistake or being a little bit off. If you line them up perfectly, put both of these lines on both pieces at the same time, it's going to work out good for you, okay? I'm going to do the same thing over here. All right, I have my piece lined up, okay? Make sure I'm nice and aligned as best as I can right here. All right, there's my lines. I'm going to put a mark on both pieces at the same time. Okay, now I know that if I drill my holes right on those lines, they will be lined up perfectly right there. It's real important, okay? Okay, so here's a typical dowel pin jig or doweling jig. They call them self-centering. It has a series of holes here, okay? It has this turning clamp or this screw kind of clamp here that helps it clamp to a piece of wood. It will get bigger, smaller, whatever size piece of wood you have. Okay. But this is what we have in the shop that looks very similar to this. These holes are all different sizes for different size dowels. We are going to use 3/8 of an inch, okay? So we have to make sure we use a special drill bit. This drill bit is 3/8 of an inch wide. This hole here for the dowels is also 3/8 of an inch wide, okay? One thing to always check, make sure your bit fits in the hole nice and snug. This is nice and tight, snug. It doesn't move around too much, okay? It goes straight in, all right? If I was to put in any of these other holes, okay, there's a lot of play here. It really just bounces all around. It's not good. It's not, you know, you won't get a good accurate hole. The hole won't be drilled very well. Nice and snug here, perfectly straight. This is what you want, okay? And just like with the pocket hole bit, this is a stop collar, okay? This will stop you from drilling too deep, and it's set to a specific height, okay, that I always set this to in the shop, okay, when we drill it in. All right, this will stop it at a very specific depth, okay, so it doesn't drill the hole too deep. Okay, the thing to check up on the setup with the stop collar here for the doweling jig, it stops it from going in a certain depth. That depth is half a dowel. So half of the dowel that we're going to use, right, you drill it in to one piece is halfway, and the second piece is the other halfway, so the whole dowel fits in there. You don't want to drill that hole too deep, just enough to get half a dowel in there. All right, so with our dowel jig, we're going to use the 3/8 bit, okay, with this hole. It's going to go in and fit perfectly, okay? So this hole on the jig, the 3/8 hole, lines up perfectly, or you want to align it with this little silver mark here. I know it's kind of hard to see. See if we get focus. All right, that little line, that little silver line right there, out of focus, is the 3/8 line. Okay, so we got to make sure we line up our work right on that line. Okay, we have our piece of wood with our lines already on them. Okay, so we would make sure we put the jig on our piece of wood. All right, we start to tighten it down, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. All right, just snug it a little bit so you could still move it. All right, but here you can see I can slide back and forth. There's my line on the piece of wood, and there's that little silver line on the jig. We want to get them as perfectly aligned as possible. Okay, take your time. Line up those two lines. That's pretty good. Right there, they're lined up. Shift it a little bit. All right, now hold it in place. Make sure it doesn't move, and then tighten the clamp here so that the piece of wood is nice and tight in here. Okay, it's all set up. All right, you don't want to see any gaps. It should be all tight in here. There should be no gaps. It shouldn't be crooked. It should be all flat and tight here. All right, our lines are lined up, and make sure this is nice and tight so it doesn't move as you drill it. Okay, again for this step, we're going to need a screw gun. We're going to drill a hole, so we'll make sure that we are on number 2, which is the faster speed. Again, this is our chuck, and if we're looking at the chuck, we'll go lefty-loosey, we'll go left, and you will see that these jaws open up. All right, we have our special bit. We're going to put it right in the jaws, in there as straight as you can get in there, loosen it up. And once it's in there, then we'll righty-tighty until it's nice and tight, okay? All right, so that's ready to go. Here's our hole. We double check our work. We double check that our lines are lined up. This is the 3/8 hole, okay? So our first one, we're gonna put our drill gun right in that hole as straight as we can. Wait to pull the trigger until you get it nice and lined up and in the hole. Then we're just gonna pull the trigger and go straight down, okay? Okay, you see how I pull it up and down? It pulls all the wood chips out. You want to make sure you get that all cleaned out. But now you have a hole there. We loosen it up. Sometimes this is hard to open up. Okay, we take that out. All right, and there is our hole lined up right with that first one. So now we're going to do the same thing to the second hole. right, so I'm going to repeat the steps for the rest of my holes on all the pieces. You should be drilling 4 sets of 2 or 8 total holes. I'll line it up. And here I'm going to show you guys how to use the clamp to put this in to hold your work. I'll line up my hole. I'll tighten this up. Make sure it's nice and tight, no gaps. Put this in here. Okay, so we got all our holes drilled. We're going to have 4 sets of 2, right? 2 and 2 on the miter. These go together. All right. And then you got the 2 on the butt joint. Okay. Now we want to check our fit. We use our dowels. We just put our dowels in. All right. Check it out there. Pretty good alignment. Everything should be fairly even. Okay. All right, so that fits there. And we'll check these out here. Okay, good alignment there. Those set up pretty good. We should be able to, a little bit of a gap there, but we'll be able to glue and clamp that together. All right. So the reason we did not do the other pocket holes and screw those into this piece before is because if we did that, we'd never be able to get these dowels in properly, okay? So this is why we're gonna do our dowels, and then the last thing we put together would be the pocket hole screws in here, all right? So now we just have to glue and clamp our dowels together, or dowel joints. We're gonna put glue in the holes and on the surfaces of each joint on all 4 of these. Make sure we get a decent amount of glue, even on the dowel pin themselves and in the hole, and that'll be all set up, and then we'll clamp it together. Always have a wet rag or wet paper towels when you're doing a glue up. You're always going to get glue. Wipe it up. Wipe it off your frame. Wherever it squeezes out. Washes off your hands very easily. Okay. Okay, so these are called quick grip or quick squeeze clamps. It's got 2 triggers. We got one here that moves it very large, the smaller one, and this one moves it very small. So you open it all the way up with this smaller trigger, get it the full length of here. This one's not big enough. All right, so we'll just go to this one here, close it up a little bit, get it in there. Just give it a little squeeze. Don't go too heavy. It might mess up your alignment. Just check it out. Make sure it's still aligned. Give it a little bit of a squeeze. All right, we're going to get a longer one for here. All right. Get a longer clamp in here. That one will squeeze this joint here. If any of the glue comes out, just wipe it up. Recheck your alignment, make sure you're all good everywhere. You have to move it around a little bit. Just double check it, squeeze it nice and tight. All right. This is the back of the frame, remember? All right. Check the front of your frame. Some glue squeeze out, okay? If it opens up like this a little bit here, I got a little bit of a gap here, okay? I'm gonna get another clamp to kind of squeeze this shut, all right? Something that works good with those are the metal ones that we use for the pocket holes. Try to get this on here and squeeze this shut nice and tight, and it'll close up that gap, okay? Play around with the clamps a little bit till you get it absolutely perfect. All right, just moving this clamp around a little bit, I was able to close up this gap. All right, squeeze the extra glue out. Really get that good squeeze. You see the glue comes out. Try to get that as tight as possible, okay? Same thing over here. This one's nice and tight. We don't see any gaps. Okay, this is what you want to do. You're going to leave a clamp like this overnight or until the next day. Okay, it definitely needs a couple hours to set up. Okay, so frame dried overnight. Got the clamps on. Do this to release the clamps. Small lever. Release this clamp. All right. So now our frame is pretty much together. The only thing we still have to fasten together are these two pocket holes here. We left this for last. Okay, right? So I just put a little glue in there.